"You're tearing this family apart over money," my father said, his voice full of disappointment. "No," I replied, my own voice ice cold. "I'm just finally showing you who is already holding the matches. Can you imagine spending your entire adult life as the designated problem? The difficult one, the anxious one, the one who is too much, while your sibling glides through life on a cloud of effortless charm and parental approval? Can you imagine finally building a life for yourself, a quiet, stable world away from all that judgment, only to have them show up at your door, not to celebrate you, but to use that stability as a resource to be plundered? Because that was my reality. My name is Amelia. I'm 28, and I'm a marketing manager for a mid-sized tech firm in Chicago. This is the story of how my golden child sister and her husband scammed me out of my life savings, and how I used the truth to set their carefully constructed world on fire. In my family, everyone had a role. My father was the stoic patriarch, my mother the nervous social director, and my older sister, Becca, was the star. She was the golden child. It wasn't just that she was beautiful and popular. It was that she possessed a kind of magical immunity. When Becca failed a test, it was because the teacher was unfair. When she crashed her first car, it was because the other driver was reckless. Her failures were never her fault. They were just unfortunate events that happened to her. And me? I was the scapegoat. When I was 10, I accidentally knocked over a vase. Becca, trying to help, rushed over and slipped on the water, crying out dramatically. I was grounded for a month, not just for breaking the vase, but for upsetting my sister. My transgressions were character flaws. Hers were charming quirks. It was the fundamental, unspoken law of our universe, a deep psychological wound I'd carried for so long it felt like part of my own skeleton. So I did what scapegoats do. I escaped. I worked my tail off, got a scholarship to the University of Illinois, and built a life for myself an hour away in the city, far from the suffocating atmosphere of our Naperville suburb. I had a good job, a small but stylish apartment in the West Loop, and a secret. That secret was a high-yield savings account I called my Freedom Fund. Every bonus, every tax refund, every dollar I saved by taking the L instead of an Uber went into that account. It had just tipped over $45,000. It wasn't just money. It was proof. Proof that I could succeed on my own terms. It was my emergency eject button, my down payment on a future they couldn't touch, a tangible representation of my own worth, separate from their constant, casual judgment. The beginning of the end started with a celebratory dinner. Becca and her husband of 2 years, Tom, had just announced they were moving to the city. My parents were ecstatic. Finally, our whole family in one place, my mother chirped, conveniently forgetting I'd lived there for 6 years. We all met at a trendy Italian place in Lincoln Park. Becca was glowing, talking a mile a minute about their plans. Tom, a handsome, slick guy who always looked like he just stepped out of a J.Crew catalog, sat beside her, nodding and smiling, his hand possessively on her knee. After the appetizers, Tom cleared his throat. "So, Amelia," he began, leaning forward with an air of conspiratorial excitement. "Becca tells me you're the financially savvy one in the family. We've actually come across an incredible opportunity, and we thought of you." My internal alarms started ringing immediately. I'd seen Tom's opportunities before, a half-baked subscription box service, an ill-fated crypto investment. They always ended with my dad quietly writing a check. "It's a real estate deal," Becca chimed in, her eyes wide and sincere. "A duplex in Logan Square. We've got a contractor lined up. The numbers are insane. We can flip it in 6 months, and the projections show at least a 40% return. We have most of the capital, but we're just one partner short of closing the deal." "We need $45,000, Tom said, looking me straight in the eye. "It's a guaranteed win, Amelia. We want to bring you in on it. Make it a family affair." My chest felt tight. My mouth went dry. "Say no," a voice in my head screamed. "This is your money, your freedom." But then I looked across the table. My father was watching me, a rare look of approval in his eyes. My mother was beaming, her hands clasped together. "Oh, Amelia, what a wonderful idea. You, helping your sister build her future. A family business." The pressure was immense. For one stupid, fleeting moment, I saw a version of the future where I wasn't the difficult one. I was the partner, the valued team member, the one they came to for help. It was a craving so deep, so primal, I couldn't ignore it. I hated myself for it, but the need to finally be on the inside was overwhelming. My mouth said yes. My mouth said, Wow, that sounds amazing. I'm in. But my stomach plummeted to the floor. I felt like I was watching myself from a distance, a foolish girl making a catastrophic mistake out of a desperate need to be loved. The next day, I went to the bank. The teller at the Chase branch looked at me with concern as I authorized the wire transfer. That's a lot of money, ma'am. Are you sure? I just nodded, a sick feeling churning in my gut. I watched my freedom fund, my armor, my future, drain away to an LLC I'd never heard of. The receipt felt like a death certificate. The initial phase of the betrayal was a slow, creeping silence. A week went by. Then two. I texted the family group chat. Any updates on the duplex? Becca sent back a photo of a latte. Tom didn't respond. I called Becca. Oh, these things take forever, Ames, she said, her voice breezy and dismissive. Permits, escrow, it's all so boring. We'll let you know when something exciting happens. The gaslighting started in the second month. My anxiety was a constant, low-grade hum in the back of my mind. I called Tom. Tom, I haven't seen any paperwork, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Could you just send me the address again? I'd love to drive by and see it. There was a pause. Amelia, you need to relax, he said, a note of paternalistic condescension in his tone. We're handling it. You're making Becca anxious with all these questions. You have to trust the process. Do you not trust us? The accusation hung in the air, sharp and pointed. I immediately backpedaled. No, of course not. It's a lot of money, you know? I laughed, even though it wasn't funny. It was a classic fawn response, trying to smooth over the conflict I had caused by simply asking a reasonable question. Exactly, he said, his voice softening now that I had been put back in my box. And we're taking it very seriously. Just let us do our thing. He hung up, and I was left with my heart hammering in my ears. I felt foolish, ashamed. I was being the difficult one again. The anxious one. They were right. I needed to relax. I tried. For another 2 weeks, I tried. I buried myself in work, went to the gym, tried to force the knot of dread in my stomach to unwind. But it only got tighter. One Saturday, I couldn't take it anymore. I had the name of the LLC from the wire transfer receipt, TNB Properties. A quick search on the Illinois Secretary of State website gave me their business address, which was just a UPS store box. But I had the property address they'd originally given me. It was burned into my memory. I got in my car and drove to Logan Square, a neighborhood known for its historic boulevards and trendy restaurants. I felt like a detective in a cheap movie, my own paranoia embarrassing me. You're going to get there, see a construction site, and feel like an idiot, I told myself. I typed the address into my GPS. It led me down a tree-lined street filled with charming brick two-flats. You have arrived, the automated voice announced. I pulled over. I looked at the building my phone was telling me was the right address. It wasn't a construction site. It wasn't a boarded-up duplex waiting for a flip. It was a beautiful, fully renovated building with a bustling coffee shop on the ground floor. A sign in the window said, The Daily Grind ST 2018. My blood ran cold. It wasn't possible. I checked the address again. And again. I got out of my car, my legs feeling shaky and disconnected from my body. I walked up to the building. The address numbers, elegantly painted on the glass door, matched the ones on the wire transfer memo. It was a lie. The whole thing. There was no duplex. There was no deal. I stumbled back to my car, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The world felt unreal, like the set of a movie had just been dismantled in front of me. They had taken my money. They had looked me in the eye and sold me a fantasy, and I had bought it because I was so desperate for them to see me. The hurt was so immense, so physical. I had to pull over a few blocks away because I couldn't see the road through my tears. My freedom fund was gone. They had stolen it. The confrontation was a nightmare. I drove straight to my parents' house in Naperville, a cold, hard rage burning away the tears. I found them all in the backyard, my parents, Becca, and Tom, having a barbecue. They were laughing. The sight of them laughing sent a fresh wave of sickness through me. There's no duplex, I said, my voice flat. I didn't shout. The quiet was more terrifying. They all turned to look at me. The laughter died. Becca's smile faltered. Tom's face became a careful, neutral mask. Amelia, what are you talking about? My mother asked, her hand fluttering to her chest. The address you gave me. It's a coffee shop. It's been a coffee shop for 5 years. Where is my money? My father stood up, taking on his role as the family mediator. Now hold on. There must be a misunderstanding. Oh, there's no misunderstanding, I said, my eyes locked on Becca and Tom. You lied to me. You stole $45,000 from me. And then the third layer of betrayal, the public destruction, began. Becca burst into tears. Huge theatrical sobs. I can't believe you're doing this, she cried, burying her face in Tom's chest. We're under so much stress, and you come here attacking us? Tom held her, stroking her hair. He looked at me with a pained, disappointed expression. Amelia, we were going to tell you. The deal, it fell through. The seller backed out at the last minute. We've been trying to find another property. We didn't want to worry you. Worry me? I choked out a laugh. You've been ignoring my calls for a month. And the deal didn't fall through, Tom. It never existed. That's enough, my father's voice boomed. Amelia, you are hysterical. You're upsetting your sister. Look at her. You come in here, making wild accusations without any proof. My proof is that my money is gone, and the property you described is a fiction. We will sort out the money, my father said dismissively. This is a family matter. But your behavior right now is unacceptable. You owe your sister an apology. I stared at him, my heart breaking all over again. I was the one who had been robbed, lied to, and gaslit for months. And I was the one who was expected to apologize. Because my legitimate anger was inconvenient. It was disturbing the peace. It was upsetting the golden child. The family closed ranks around her so fast it gave me vertigo. My mother was cooing at Becca. My father was looking at me with cold fury. And Tom just held her, looking at me over her head with an expression of pure, smug triumph. He had won. He had my money, he had my family's loyalty, and he had successfully painted me as the crazy, vindictive bitch. I left. There was nothing else to do. My own family had convicted me without a trial. That night, the mid-story twist I never saw coming finally arrived. It came in the form of a phone call from Becca. I almost didn't answer. But I did. I can't believe you, she sobbed into the phone. You've ruined everything. I ruined everything? I shot back. You stole my life savings, Becca. Oh, get over the stupid money, she shrieked, and the grief in her voice was replaced by a sudden venomous rage. You have no idea what it's like. You have no idea how hard it is. You just sit in your perfect little apartment with your perfect little job and your stupid savings account, judging everyone. Judging everyone? I've done nothing but help you my whole life. Help me, she laughed, a high, unhinged sound. You think you were helping me? Every time you got an A, every time Dad bragged about your brilliant mind, it was like a knife in my gut. You were the smart one. You were the one who had it all figured out. I was just the pretty one. Do you know how much a pretty face costs to maintain, Amelia? The clothes, the hair, the trips Tom and I had to take to keep up with his friends? We're drowning in debt. I needed that money. For once, I needed to be the one who had her life together. But you couldn't even let me have that, could you? You had to come and tear it all down, just to be right. And there it was. The motive. It wasn't just a simple scam to cover their debts. It was a vicious act of resentment. My quiet, stable success wasn't a source of pride for her. It was a personal insult. She felt my life was a judgment on hers. Taking my money wasn't just about the cash. It was about pulling me down to her level. It was about proving that my perfect life was just as fragile as hers. She didn't want to rise to my level. She wanted to drag me down into the mud with her. A strange, cold clarity washed over me. The hurt was still there, a raw, gaping wound. But the confusion was gone. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a declaration of war. A war she had been fighting against me, in her own head, for our entire lives. You're sick, Becca, I said, and I hung up the phone. The girl who cried in her car was gone. The woman who answered was someone new. Someone colder. Someone who was done being the victim. My marketing skills were not just for selling software. They were for finding information. I channeled every ounce of my rage and grief into a new, singular project. The destruction of Tom and Becca. I started with a deep dive into their digital lives. I analyzed their social media, cross-referencing their posts with public records. Tom had claimed to be a day trader. I found his Robinhood account mentioned in an old Reddit post. It was a wasteland of bad bets on meme stocks. Becca's influencer career was a facade, propped up by buying followers and engagement pods. But the real breakthrough came from a different kind of marketing, networking. I started searching for anyone who had ever been in business with Tom. I found a guy named Kevin, who had been Tom's partner in the failed subscription box service. I reached out to him on LinkedIn with a vague message about doing due diligence on a potential business partner. Kevin called me an hour later. Let me guess, he said, his voice weary. He came to you with a can't-miss deal. I told him everything. He listened, sighing periodically. Yeah, that's his move, Kevin said. He did the same thing to me. Convinced me to put in 20 grand of my own money. The business failed, and the money just disappeared. By the time I realized what happened, he and Becca were on a much-needed vacation in Bali, posting pictures of themselves drinking out of coconuts. My money paid for those coconuts. He was angry, but he was resigned. He'd written it off as a loss. It's your word against his, he said. You can't prove it. I think I can, I said, an idea starting to form in my mind, cold and sharp as a shard of glass. Kevin, did you ever sign a partnership agreement with him? Yeah, a whole stack of documents. He had a lawyer draft them. Made it all look super official. Do you still have them? I think so. In a box in my garage somewhere. Why? Because Tom is sloppy, I said. And I'm a really, really good marketing manager. The final twist, the emotional checkmate, wasn't something I found online. It was something I built. Kevin sent me the documents from his failed business with Tom. It was a standard LLC operating agreement. I took it, and I took the one-page investment agreement Tom had sent me to sign for the duplex deal, a document I had stupidly signed without reading closely. I spent a weekend comparing them, line by line. The legal jargon was dense, but I was a marketer. I knew how to read the fine print. And I found it. A single clause, buried deep in both documents. Clause 14.2. Dispute resolution. It was identical in both agreements. All disputes arising from this agreement shall be settled through binding arbitration conducted by a mutually agreed-upon arbitrator from the American Arbitration Association. Tom, in his arrogance and laziness, had used the exact same legal template for both scams. He had a template for betrayal. This was the link. This was the proof of a pattern of behavior. Kevin's story wasn't just a story anymore. It was a legally linked prior act. But that wasn't the checkmate. The checkmate was what I did next. I put together a presentation. A deck. It was the kind of thing I would build for a multi-million-dollar product launch. It was beautiful, persuasive, and utterly damning. It had a timeline of their lies. It had screenshots of their social media posts, time-stamped next to bank holidays when I was trying to reach them. It had Kevin's entire story, complete with copies of his legal documents and bank statements. And it had Clause 14.2, highlighted in brilliant, damning red. I titled the presentation, TNB Properties, a case study in serial fraud. My family, oblivious, decided to stage an intervention. For me, my mother called, her voice dripping with fake concern. We're all worried about you, Amelia. We're having a family meeting at the house on Sunday. We need to talk about your anger. I'll be there, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. I'll even bring a presentation. The cathartic confrontation took place in my parents' sterile, beige living room. My entire family was there. Aunts, uncles, my grandparents. They were arranged in a semicircle, with me on a single armchair in the middle, like a defendant at a tribunal. Becca and Tom sat on the sofa opposite me, holding hands, the picture of aggrieved innocence. My father stood up to begin the proceedings. Amelia, he started, his voice resonating with patriarchal authority. We are all here because we love you, but you are tearing this family apart over money. That was my cue. No, I said, my voice clear and carrying through the silent room. I'm not. But since we're all here, I'd like to present a new marketing campaign I've been working on. I stood up and connected my laptop to their big screen TV. The title slide flashed onto the screen, TNB Properties, a case study in serial fraud. A confused murmur went through the room. Becca and Tom froze. This is a story about brand promises versus product reality. I began, my voice cool and professional, like I was in a boardroom. I walked them through the whole story, slide by slide. The pitch, the wire transfer, the fake address, the gaslighting. With every slide, the evidence was there in black and white. Then I got to Kevin's story. His face appeared on the screen, next to a quote about his stolen $20,000. As you can see, I said, our key stakeholders, Tom and Becca, have a history of leveraging personal relationships for capital acquisition, followed by a strategic dissolution of communication and a failure to deliver on promised returns. It's a highly repeatable, if unethical, business model. Tom jumped to his feet. This is slander. You can't prove any of this. Actually, I can, I said, and I clicked to the final slide. It was just the text of Clause 14.2, from both his agreement with me and his agreement with Kevin. "It turns out you used a template for your fraud, Tom. And that template legally binds my case to Kevin's. This isn't just a family squabble anymore. It's a multi-plaintiff arbitration case for serial fraud. And Kevin has already agreed to testify." The room was utterly silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Becca was staring at the screen, her face a mask of pure, dawning horror. She looked at Tom, really looked at him, and I could see the moment she realized he hadn't just been her partner. He had been her co-conspirator in a crime that was now documented and provable. I turned to my parents. "You wanted to know where my money went. It went here," I said, gesturing to the screen. "You raised a liar and a thief. And you enabled her every step of the way. You can have her." I packed up my laptop. I didn't look at any of them. I walked out of the living room, out of the house, and out of their lives. As I closed the front door behind me, I heard the first scream. It was Becca. That was 6 months ago. My lawyer served them with the arbitration notice the next day. Faced with a public, legally documented case for serial fraud, my father quietly paid me back the full $45,000, plus damages, from his own retirement account to make it go away. Becca and Tom are still together, but I hear they're selling their house. The family is broken. My mother tried to call me a few times, leaving tearful messages about forgiveness, but I never answered. I took my money, my freedom fund, and I gave myself the freedom I'd always dreamed of. I quit my job. I bought a one-way ticket to Lisbon. I'm writing this from a small cafe overlooking the Tagus River. The sun is warm on my face. I'm taking a pottery class. I'm learning a new language. I'm building a new life, one that has nothing to do with marketing or money, and everything to do with joy. The wound of being the scapegoat, of feeling like I was born apologizing for my own existence, is finally healing. Because in that living room, I didn't just win an argument. I reclaimed my own story. I took the role they had assigned me, the difficult, anxious, problem child, and I showed them it was a source of strength. My anxiety made me meticulous. My difficulty made me unwilling to back down. I stopped needing them to see my worth because I finally, truly saw it for myself. So I want to ask you all this. Have you ever been assigned a role in your family that wasn't true to who you are? The clown, the rebel, the invisible one? What was the moment you decided to tear up the script and write your own? Please share your stories in the comments. Knowing others have found their own freedom makes mine feel even more real. And if you're interested in stories about breaking free and starting over, I hope you'll subscribe.